I stood there in our bedroom, the faint light of dawn creeping through the curtains, holding Isabel's silk scarf in my hands. It was soft, delicate, the kind of thing she'd wear to some fancy hospital dinner or a night out with her doctor friends. But that morning, it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. The smell hit me first. A sharp, musky cologne that wasn't mine, clinging to the fabric like an unwanted guest. I brushed it off at first, told myself it was nothing. Maybe she hugged some guy at work, a colleague with bad taste and aftershave. But then I saw it. The lipstick stain, bright red, smeared on the edge, a color she never wore. My stomach dropped. I just stood there staring at it, my mind racing, but my body frozen. 13 years of marriage. And this was how it started to unravel. Not with some big fight, but with a quiet, sickening moment I couldn't unsee. I'd been ignoring the signs for months. Isabel's late nights at the hospital had become normal. Her excuses, busy shift or paperwork piled up. I didn't push her on it. I trusted her. She was a pediatrician. For God's sake, saving kids was her life, and me. I was busy too. Crunching numbers as a financial consultant, keeping our life in Ridgewood Heights afloat. We had a good setup. A big house with a wraparound porch, Cole and AA running around the backyard. A marriage that looked solid to anyone watching. But that scarf changed everything. I dropped it on the dresser and noticed something else. My shirt. The one she'd worn last night after spilling wine on her dress. Was hanging over the chair. I picked it up and there it was. Another lipstick mark on the collar. Same red. My chest tightened. This wasn't an accident. She wasn't just cheating. She was leaving clues like she wanted me to catch her. I don't know how long I stood there, the shirt in my hands, my mind spinning. The kids were still asleep down the hall. Cole 11, probably dreaming about baseball, and Ava 8 curled up with that stuffed bunny. She never let go of. The house was silent, but inside my head, it was chaos. How long had this been going on? Who was he? Some doctor? She worked with a patient's dad. I kept picturing her laughing with someone else, her hand on his arm. While I sat home making dinner for the kids, my throat burned. I wanted to scream, to shake her awake and demand answers, but I didn't. I just put the shirt back, smoothed it out like nothing was wrong, and went downstairs to make coffee. That's when it hit me. Isabel didn't just break my trust. She broke us, and worse, she was daring me to do something about it. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Isabel came downstairs all smiles, her hair still damp from the shower morning. "Adam," she said, grabbing her mug like it was any other day. I nodded, muttered something back, but my eyes kept darting to her neck, wondering if that cologne was still on her skin. She didn't notice or didn't care. She kissed the kids goodbye, grabbed her bag and left for work. I stood at the kitchen window watching her car pull out of the driveway, my hands clenched around the sink. 13 years, 2 kids, a life I thought was ours. And now this. I didn't know what to do next, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let her play me for a fool. Not anymore. That scarf, that lipstick. They weren't just evidence. They were the start of something I couldn't ignore. Something that would change everything I thought I knew about my wife, my family, and myself. I spent the day distracted, barely able to focus on my clients' portfolios. Numbers usually calmed me. Clean, predictable, something I could control, but not today. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that red stain, smelled that cologne by the time I picked up Cole and AA from school. I was a mess, but I hid it. "How was your day?" But I asked Cole. Ruffling his hair, he shrugged, mumbled about a math test, chattered about a new friend, her voice bright and oblivious. I smiled, nodded. But inside I was breaking. How do you tell your kids their mom might not be who you thought she was? You don't, not yet. So I kept it together, made spaghetti for dinner, helped with homework. Isabel texted she'd be late again. Emergency at the hospital. I didn't reply. When the kids were in bed, I went back to the bedroom, picked up that scarf again, and sat on the edge of the mattress. My marriage was dying, and I wasn't sure if I could save it or if I even wanted to. All I knew was that Isabel had started this game, and I wasn't going to lose without a fight. I sat at the kitchen table that morning, the kids already off to school. The house quiet, except for the hum of the fridge. Isabel had left early again. Her usual routine these days, and I was alone with my coffee, staring at the spot where she'd sat just hours ago, smiling like everything was fine to everyone else. We were the perfect couple, Adam and Isabel Walker, the golden pair of Ridgewood Heights. Friends would tell us how lucky we were, how they envied our life at parties. Isabel would lean into me laughing at some dumb joke. I'd made her hand resting on mine like it belonged there. I'd grin back, proud to be her husband, proud of the family we'd built. Cole and Ava were the heart of it. Cole with his quiet intensity, Ava with her endless energy. People saw us and thought that's what love looks like, but sitting there, the memory of that scarf still burning in my mind, I realized the truth. It was all a lie. The love I thought we had was already dead. I'd been too blind to see it. Looking back, the signs were there, scattered across the last couple of years, like crumbs I should have followed. It started small, her staying late at the hospital, blaming it on a heavier caseload. I nod, tell her I understood, even bring her dinner. Sometimes, when she texted, she'd be stuck there past midnight. She'd kissed me quick, say thanks, but her eyes never really met mine. I figured it was stress. Being a pediatrician isn't easy. Sick kids, worried parents, long hours. I didn't want to add to her load by complaining. But then the coldness crept in. Our bed felt bigger, emptier. She'd roll away when I reached for her, muttering. She was tired, and I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, telling myself it was just a face. We'd been through rough patches before. Money worries when I started my business, the exhaustion. After Ava was born, we always came out stronger, so I kept believing we'd fix this too. I was wrong. It wasn't just the late nights or the distance between us. It was the little things that piled up, things I'd brushed off as nothing. The way she started correcting me in front of people. Sharp, cutting remarks disguised as jokes. At a barbecue last summer, I'd been telling a story about a client, and she interrupted. "That's not how it happened, Adam. You always exaggerate." Everyone laughed, but it stung. She'd never done that before. Not like that, or how she'd pull her hand away when I tried to hold it at those hospital fundraisers, brushing it off with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'd stand there praising her to the room. I couldn't do what I do without Isabel, and she nod, say something sweet back. But it felt rehearsed, like lines from a script we both memorized. I kept thinking it was me that I wasn't doing enough, wasn't being the husband she needed. I'd work harder, plan date nights she'd cancel by her flowers. She'd forget to water. I was chasing a ghost. The kids didn't see it, or maybe they did, and I just didn't want to admit it. Cole had started getting quieter, spending more time in his room with his video games. Ava still hugged us both, but her questions about why Mommy was always gone made my chest ache. I'd say she's helping sick kids, sweetie, and she nod, trusting me. I wanted to believe it too. But the truth was, Isabel had checked out of our marriage long before that scarf showed up. The late nights weren't just work. The coldness wasn't just exhaustion. She was pulling away, building a wall I couldn't climb, and I'd been too busy playing the good husband to notice. Maybe it started 2 years ago, around the time we went through IVF. For Ava, those long months of doctor visits and hope. Back then, she'd held my hand, cried with me when it worked. Now I wondered if even that was real. I took a sip of my coffee, cold now, and stared out the window at the backyard. The swing set Cole and I built last spring suited in the breeze, a reminder of better days. I thought about the last hospital fundraiser just a month ago. Isabel had been radiant, working the room while I stood by the bar chatting with her colleagues. They'd clapped me on the back, said how lucky I was to have her. I'd agreed, smiling like an idiot, but now replaying it. I saw the cracks, her glancing at her phone, too often slipping out to take a call, coming back with that tight little smile. I'd asked who it was, and she'd said, "Just work. I didn't push. I never pushed." And that was my mistake. The perfect life we'd built wasn't perfect at all. It was a stage, and I'd been playing my part while she rewrote the script. The question now wasn't how we'd fallen apart. It was what she was hiding and why she'd let me find that scarf. I stood in the kitchen that morning, a week before our 13th anniversary. The house still quiet while the kids slept upstairs. Isabel was in the shower, the faint sound of water running through the pipes, and I was trying to keep busy wiping down the counter, setting out cereal bowls. Anything to stop my mind from spinning the scarf, the lipstick, the cologne. They've been eating at me for days, gnawing at every thought until I couldn't sleep. I kept telling myself I was overreacting, that there had to be an explanation. Maybe I'd confront her later, plan something nice for the anniversary to pull us back together. I grabbed her phone off the counter, not to snoop, just to check our shared calendar. I wanted to see if we could get away for a weekend. Just the two of us fix whatever was breaking. But when I swiped it open, everything changed. His name stared back at me. Dr. Marcus Hayes. It was right there. A text notification glowing on the screen, and my stomach dropped like I'd been punched. Marcus, I knew him tall, slick, one of those charming types from the hospital. I'd shaken his hand at fundraisers, made small talk about golf or the weather. While he flashed that easy grin, the message was short, but it cut deep. Last night was perfect. Can't wait to see you again. When are you telling him? My hand started shaking, the phone slipping a little in my grip. I didn't think, just scrolled up my thumb, moving faster than my brain could catch up. Months of texts unfolded in front of me, secret meetups, meet me at the lake house, palm inside jokes. He'd lose it if he knew. And then the worst, he still thinks. "We're just having issues, poor guy," Marcus replied. "At least he makes a good babysitter while you're with me." I felt sick, like the air had been sucked out of the room. I stood there staring at the screen, my heart pounding so hard. I could hear it in my ears. Every word was a knife slicing through 13 years of trust. Isabel wasn't just cheating, she was laughing about it, mocking me with this guy. Poor guy, that's what she called me. The man who'd stayed up with her through med school finals, who'd held her hand during labor with Hole, and Ava, who'd built this life with her. She turned me into a joke. My hands tightened around the phone, and for a second I wanted to throw it against the wall. Let it shatter like everything else. But I didn't. I heard the showers stop the creak of the floorboards. As she moved upstairs, I set the phone back on the counter, exactly where it had been, and turned to the coffee maker. My hands were steady now, but inside I was a wreck. She came down a few minutes later, wrapped in her robe, hair dripping onto her shoulders. "Morning," she said, grabbing her mug like it was any other day. I nodded, muttered morning back, and handed her the coffee. She smiled. Small, quick, the kind of smile you give a stranger. And I watched her searching her face for something. Anything. Guilt, shame, nothing. She looked normal. Calm, like she hadn't spent months lying to me. I wanted to scream, "Who's Marcus? What the hell have you been doing?" But I didn't. I just stood there sipping my coffee, letting the silence stretch between us. She kissed me goodbye, light barely there, and headed out the door. I waited until her car was gone, then walked into the bathroom, locked the door, and punched the mirror. The glass cracked. My knuckles bled, but I didn't feel it. All I felt was rage. The rest of the day was a blur. I dropped the kids at school, went to my office, stared at my computer screen without seeing it. Numbers swam in front of me. CL sent investments, profit margins, but none of it mattered. All I could see was that text. "When are you telling him she was planning to leave me?" And Marcus was in on it. I kept replaying every moment I'd seen him at hospital events, shaking my hand, smiling like we were buddies. Had he been laughing at me then too? And Isabel? How long had she been sneaking off to him, the Lake house? She told me it was a work retreat last month. I'd watched Cole and Ava that weekend, taking them to the park while she was with him. My chest burned, a mix of anger and shame. I'd been blind trusting while they turned me into a fool by the time I got home. The kids were doing homework, and I cooked dinner on autopilot chicken and rice, their favorite. Isabel texted she'd be late again. Hospital stuff. I didn't reply. After the kids were in bed, I sat on the couch, the house dark around me, and let it sink in. She wasn't just cheating. She was done with me, with us, and she'd been stringing me along until she was ready to pull the plug. The texts proved it. Months of lies, months of her slipping away while I held everything together. I thought about the scarf, the lipstick, the cologne. They weren't accidents. She'd left them for me to find, testing me, maybe even wanting me to blow up, so she could walk away clean. But I wasn't going to give her that. Not yet. I play along, keep quiet, figure out my next move. Because if Isabel thought she could break me and walk away smiling, she was dead wrong. I waited until the kids were asleep that night, the house settling into that heavy quiet that comes after a long day. Cole's light was off, Ava's bunny tucked under her arm. I checked on them, both kissed their foreheads, told them I loved them. It was routine, something I'd done 1,000 times. But tonight it felt different. Like I was holding on to them tighter because everything else was slipping away. Isabel was downstairs scrolling through her phone on the couch, the blue light flickering across her face. I'd been carrying those texts in my head all day. Marcus. Her lies, the way they laughed at me. My knuckles still stung from punching the mirror, a dull ache that matched the one in my chest. I couldn't keep pretending, not after what I'd seen. So I took a deep breath, walked into the living room, and stood in front of her. It was time to end the game. "Are you sleeping with Marcus?" I asked, my voice low, but steady. I didn't yell, didn't shake, just looked at her waiting. She didn't even flinch. She set her phone down, slow and deliberate, and met my eyes. "Yes," she said, flat like she was telling me she'd picked up milk from the store. No hesitation, no apology, just that one word. Hanging there between us, I felt my throat tighten, my hands clench at my sides. But I didn't move. Her face was blank, almost bored, like my whole world. Crashing down was just an annoyance to her. I'd spent 13 years in this house, with her nights whispering about our dreams, mornings planning our future, and now she was sitting there, acting like I was nothing. "I want a divorce, Adam," she added, leaning back against the couch, crossing her arms. That was it. No tears, no fight, just a demand, cold and final. I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at her, trying to find the woman I'd married in those hard, empty eyes. Where was the Isabel who'd laughed with me over burnt dinners, who'd cried in my arms when her dad died? She was gone, replaced by this stranger who'd been planning her exit while I played the clueless husband. I wanted to beg to ask why, to demand how she could throw us away like this. But I didn't. Something in her tone, the way she said it. So sure, so practiced, told me she'd been ready for this a long time. This wasn't a spur of the moment thing. She'd thought it through, probably rehearsed it with Marcus, and I was just the last box to check off. So I nodded slow and said, "Okay." Her eyebrows lifted a little, like she'd expected me to fall apart. But I turned and walked upstairs, leaving her there because I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break the next morning. I woke up to the sound of her moving around the kitchen. I stayed in bed for a minute, staring at the ceiling, the weight of last night pressing down on me. My marriage was over, just like that. With one word and a shrug, I got up, got dressed, and went downstairs. Isabel was pouring coffee, acting normal, like we hadn't just ripped our life apart. On the counter, next to her mug, was a business card. Her lawyer's name printed in sharp black letters. She didn't say anything about it, just sipped her coffee and glanced at me. "I'll be at the hospital late again," she said, then grabbed her bag and left. I picked up the card, ran my thumb over the edge, and felt a cold resolve settle in. She thought this. Was it that I'd signed some papers, let her walk away with Marcus and fade into the background? She was wrong. I dropped the kids at school, drove to my office, and sat at my desk. The card still in my pocket. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The shock was gone, replaced by something harder, sharper. Isabel had played me, sure, but I wasn't going to crumble like she expected. I'd built this life too. Our home, our family, my career. And I wasn't just some pawn she could toss aside. I thought about Cole and Ava, their faces last night, so peaceful in sleep. They didn't deserve this mess. But I'd be damned if I let her take them from me, and Marcus smirking, texting her while I watched our kids. He didn't get to win either. I pulled out my phone, searched his name, found his bio on the hospital website. Dr. Marcus Hayes, pediatric surgeon, all polished and perfect. I hated him, but I hated her more for letting him in by lunchtime. I'd made a decision. I wasn't just losing a wife. I was stepping into a fight. Isabel thought she'd planned it all out, that she dropped this bomb and I'd roll over. But that business card wasn't the end of it. It was the start. I didn't know what she was hiding, why she'd been so bold, so careless with that scarf and lipstick. But I knew it was bigger than an affair. She'd wanted me to find out, wanted me to push her to this point, and now that we were here, I wasn't going to let her control the story. I'd dig, I'd fight, and I'd make sure she regretted underestimating me. Because the biggest betrayal wasn't just her cheating, it was what she thought she could get away with. Next, I sat across from Daniel Reyes in his office that afternoon, the city skyline stretching out behind him through a wall of glass. He was a divorce attorney, one of the best in town, with a reputation for winning messy cases. I'd called him, after dropping the kids at school, the lawyer's card. Isabel left, still burning a hole in my pocket. My hands were steady. Now my mind clear. For the first time since I'd seen those texts, Daniel leaned back in his chair, his sharp eyes sizing me up as I told him everything. The scarf, the lipstick, Marcus, her cold. Yes, last night, the divorce demand. He didn't interrupt, just nodded, scribbling notes on a legal pad. When I finished, he set his pen down and said, "Start digging, Adam. If she's this bold, there's more she's not telling you." His words stuck with me, heavy and true. I left his office with a plan, and that evening I went looking for answers. Back home, after the kids were in bed, I pulled out our financial records. Isabel and I had joint accounts. Checking, savings investments, all stuff I'd managed for years as the numbers guy. I never questioned it. She trusted me with the money while she focused on her career. I grabbed my laptop, a stack of bank statements, and a beer. Then settled at the kitchen table. The house was dark, quiet except for the hum of the fridge, and I started flipping through the papers, not expecting much. At first it was normal mortgage payments, groceries, Cole's baseball fees, Ava's dance lessons. But then I saw it. A withdrawal, $5,000 dated 6 months ago to something called Horizon Holdings. I frowned. Checked the next month. Another one. $7,000. Then $10,000. The month after my heart started beating faster, I pulled up the online account. Scrolled back. 2 years there, it was over and over, hundreds of thousands gone all to Horizon Holdings. I sat back staring at the screen. My beer forgotten, nearly $200,000 drained from our savings. And I'd never noticed how I missed this. I'd been so busy keeping our life running, paying bills, planning vacations, making sure the kids had what they needed, that I hadn't seen her siphoning money right under my nose. I grabbed my phone, searched Horizon Holdings. Nothing clear came up. Just a generic business listing, no details. My get twisted. This wasn't some random investment. Every week, withdrawal lined up with something else. 2 years ago, when we'd gone through IVF to have Ava, those months were a blur of doctor visits, Hope and Isabel's late nights at the clinic. She'd said it was work. But now I wondered, what was she doing with that money? I called the bank the next morning. My voice calm, even though I was shaking inside. The rep confirmed it. Horizon Holdings was registered in Isabel's name alone, a private account she'd set up without me. I thanked them, hung up, and sat there at my desk. The kids' laughter, drifting in from the backyard where they were playing. My hands clenched into fists. She'd hidden this from me. Built a secret fund while I paid for our life, our house, our cars, our kids' future. Why was it for Marcus? A getaway plan? My mind raced, piecing it together. The affair was bad enough. But this was something bigger. Something she'd been working on for years. I thought about her leaving that scarf, the lipstick, like she wanted me to catch her. Maybe this was part of it too, pushing me to unravel her lies. I spent the day digging deeper, pulling every statement I could find. The withdrawals were steady, deliberate. Do $50,000 here, $10,000 there. Small enough to slip past if you weren't looking. But I was looking now. I called Daniel, told him what I'd found good. He said, "Keep going. Money like that doesn't vanish. It's tied to something we use it." His voice was firm, like he's seen this before, and it steadied me. I hung up and went back to the records, my anger growing with every page. Isabel wasn't just cheating. She was stealing planning, building something I wasn't part of. I thought about Ava, how we'd fought so hard to have her, how Isabel had held my hand through every appointment. Had that been a lie too? Was the money tied to the IVF? Somehow, by nightfall, I had a stack of printouts, a headache, and a fire in my chest. The kids were asleep, Isabel still at the hospital, or wherever she really was. I sat in the living room, the statements spread out on the coffee table, and stared at them. Horizon Holdings 2 years, $200,000. It didn't add up, not yet. But I knew one thing. This wasn't just about Marcus. She'd been playing a longer game, one I'd been too trusting to see. I thought about confronting her, slamming the papers in her face, demanding answers. But I didn't. Daniel was right. I had to dig more. Find the whole truth. Because if Isabel thought she could take our money, our life, and walk away clean, she didn't know me at all. I wasn't just fighting for a divorce now. I was fighting for everything she tried to hide. I sat in my car outside a rundown diner on the edge of town, the neon sign flickering in the dusk, my hands gripping the steering wheel. Daniel had set this up. Said I needed to meet Dr. Philip Grayson, a guy who'd worked with Isabel at Ridgewood Medical Center until he'd left under what he called mysterious SMIRK IR stances. After finding the money tied to Horizon Holdings, I couldn't shake the feeling that Isabel's secrets ran deeper than an affair. The $200,000, the timing with Ava IVF. It was all connected, and I needed answers. Philip had reached out to Daniel after hearing about my divorce, said he had something I'd want to know. So there I was parked in the gravel lot, watching the door, my stomach churning with nerves and anger. Whatever he had to say, I knew it'd change everything. He walked in first, a wiry guy, mid-50s with graying hair and tired eyes. I followed a minute later, sliding into the booth across from him. The diner smelled like grease and coffee, the kind of place nobody looked twice at us. He didn't waste time. I've been waiting for this day, he said, his voice low, leaning forward. I frowned, asked what he meant. He took a sip of his water, then looked me dead in the eye. Your wife's a liar, Adam. What she did to you, it's worse than you think. My chest tightened. I'd come here expecting something about the money, maybe a lead on Horizon Holdings, but the way he said it made my skin crawl. Tell me, I said, keeping my voice steady, even though I wanted to grab him and shake it out of him. He leaned back, glanced around like he was making sure no one was listening, then started talking. 2 years ago, during your IVF for Ava, Isabel made a deal. Horizon Holdings, it's a shell company tied to a fertility clinic she worked with on the side. She didn't just use it to move money, she used it to switch your sperm. I stared at him, my brain stumbling over the words, switch my what? I asked, my voice louder than I meant. He held up a hand, kept going. She made sure you weren't. The biological father picked an anonymous donor, instead paid for it through Horizon, kept it off the books. At Ridgewood, I found out, tried to blow the whistle and they pushed me out. My mouth went dry. I couldn't move, couldn't think. Just sat there, his words sinking in like lead. I thought about Ava, her big brown eyes, her wild curls, the way she'd climb into my lap and call me daddy. Cold, too quiet, steady, my shadow. Since he was a toddler, they weren't mine. Isabel had done this. Lied to me, to them, to everyone. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles white. Why I managed to choke out. Philip shrugged his face. Grim power, maybe control, or just because she could. She's cold, Adam. You know that now. I did the scarf, the lipstick, the way. She'd said yes about Marcus. It all fit. She wasn't just cheating, she'd rewritten our family, taking my kids from me before I even knew it. I wanted to scream, to drive home and tear into her. But I just sat there numb. Philip slid a folder across the table. Copies of emails, clinic records, proof he dug up before they fired him. This will hold up in court. He said, use it. I nodded, took the folder, my hands shaking as I flipped through it. Dates, payments, Isabel's signature. It was all there 2 years ago while I'd been sitting in waiting rooms hoping for Ava. She'd been plotting this. The $200,000 wasn't just for her and Marcus. It was for this to pay off the clinic. To bury the truth, I looked up at Philly. Why tell me now? He sighed, because I've got a daughter too. If someone did this to me, I'd want to know. I thanked him, slid out of the booth and walked back to my car, the folder heavy in my hands driving home. My head was a mess. The kids were with a sitter. Isabel was working late again, and I kept seeing their faces. Cole's grin when he hit a home run. Ava's laugh when I tickled her. Not mine, biologically sure, but what? Did that change? I'd raised them, loved them, been their dad every day. But Isabel, she'd known all along, kept this secret while I built our life around a lie. I pulled into the garage, sat there in the dark, the engine ticking as it cooled. My hands gripped the steering wheel again tighter. This time she'd taken more than my trust, more than our marriage. She'd taken my kids' truth, and I'd never forgive her for that. I went inside, locked the folder in my desk, and poured a drink. The house was too quiet, too empty, without the kids' noise. I thought about confronting her when she got home, showing her the proof, watching her squirm. But I didn't. Not. Yet Philip's words echoed. Use it I would, but I'd do it right. I get DNA tests. Build a case, hit her where it hurt, because this wasn't just betrayal, it was fraud, a crime, and she'd pay for it. I finished my drink, set the glass down, and made a promise to myself. Isabel thought she'd won, thought she could remake our family and walk away. She was wrong. I'd fight for Cole, for Ava, for me, and I'd make sure she lost everything. I woke up the next morning with a weight on my chest, the kind that doesn't lift, no matter how deep you breathe. Philip's words from the diner kept replaying in my head. Isabel switching my sperm, Ava and Cole not being M biologically Horizon Holdings hiding it all. The folder he'd given me was locked in my desk, but it felt like it was burning a hole through the house. I couldn't just sit on this. I had, to know for sure, had to see it in black and white. So after dropping Cole and Ava at school, I drove to a drugstore across town, one where nobody'd recognize me. My hands shook as I grabbed 2 DNA test kits off the shelf, the kind you swab and send off. I paid cash, avoided the cashier's eyes, and got out of there fast back home. I sat in the kitchen staring at the boxes. Knowing this was the point of no return, I waited until the kids were home. That afternoon, Isabel was at the hospital, or with Marcus, who knows, and I called them into the living room. Cole flopped onto the couch, still in his baseball jersey, and Ava bounced over her ponytail, swinging "What up, Dad?" Cole asked his voice. Casual but curious, I forced a smile, held up the swabs. Just a little science thing, I said, keeping it light. They're testing DNA at school. Right. Thought we'd try it too. Ava giggled, always up for something new, and Cole shrugged game. As ever, I swabbed their cheeks quick and easy, joking about how we'd find out if they were secretly aliens. They laughed, and, for a second, it felt normal. Me and my kids messing around like always. But my stomach was in knots. I sealed the samples, added my own, and mailed them to a discreet testing center Daniel had recommended. Then I waited. The next 5 days were hell. I went through the motions, work, school runs, dinners with the kids. But my mind was somewhere else. Isabel floated in and out her usual late-night excuses, barely registering. I didn't confront her, didn't even look at her longer than I had to. She didn't notice or didn't care. Every morning I checked the mail, my heart pounding until the envelope finally came. It was plain, unmarked, just my name on it. I took it to my office, locked the door, and sat at my desk staring at it for a good 10 minutes before I ripped it open. The results were stark. Probability of paternity, 0% for both Cole and Ava. I read it again then a third time, hoping I'd miss something I hadn't. My kids, the ones I'd raised, loved, fought for, weren't mine. Not by blood. Isabel had made sure of that. I leaned back in my chair, the paper trembling in my hands. It wasn't just the fact of it. It was her. She'd done this, planned. It paid for it with our money. While I sat in those IVF waiting rooms dreaming of our family, I thought about Cole's first steps, Ava's tiny hand in mine at the park. Those moments were mine, but she'd stolen the root of them. My eyes burned, but I didn't cry. I was past that now, past shock, past hurt. What I felt was cold, hard anger, the kind that settles in and doesn't let go. I grabbed my printer, made 3 copies of the results. One for Daniel, one for a safety deposit box, and one for Isabel. Not now. But when the time was right, she'd see it, and I'd watch her face when she did. That night I poured a whiskey and sat in the dark, the house quiet around me. The kids were asleep, Isabel still out. I didn't care where she was anymore. My mind was on what came next. This wasn't just about the divorce, now it was about revenge. She'd taken my trust, my money, my family's truth, and thought she'd get away with it. She thought I'd sign her papers, let her run off with Marcus and fade away. No chance. I'd use this Phillips proof, the DNA, the money trail, and I'd hit her hard. I pictured her standing there, smug, saying yes about Marcus, dropping that lawyer's card like she'd already won she hadn't. I'd destroy her. Not with yelling or begging, but with cold, calculated steps she'd never see coming. I called Daniel the next morning, told him about the results. "Perfect," he said, his voice sharp. "This is fraud. Adam Medical Financial. We've got her." He was already working the angle, talking lawsuits, criminal charges. I nodded along, but my mind was elsewhere. On Isabel, on the life she built on lies. I thought about the hospital, her pristine reputation as a pediatrician. She'd lose that, her career, her smug little world with Marcus. I'd take it all. I hung up, went to my desk and pulled out Philip's folder again, cross-checking dates with the bank statements. It lined up perfectly. Every payment to Horizon Holdings matched the IVF timeline. She'd been so careful, but not careful enough by the time Isabel got home that night. I was calm, too calm. Maybe she walked in, tossed her bag on the counter and barely glanced at me. "Kids asleep?" she asked. I nodded, sipping my coffee. She didn't say anything else, just went upstairs. I watched her go, knowing she had no idea what was coming. The DNA results were my weapon, and I'd use them when it hurt her most. This wasn't just about ending a marriage anymore. It was about making her pay for Cole, for Ava, for every lie she'd fed me, and I'd enjoy every second of it. I stood in front of the mirror that morning, adjusting my tie, my reflection staring back at me with hard, steady eyes. Tonight was the Ridgewood Medical Gala, the big annual event where Isabel would get her Medical Excellence Award, a shiny plaque for her shiny life, all built on lies. She'd been buzzing about it for weeks, picking out a dress, practicing her speech, acting like she deserved every bit of praise. I nodded along, played the supportive husband, but inside I was counting down to this moment. She had no idea what I'd been doing. Meeting with Daniel, gathering evidence from Philip, locking the DNA results and bank records in a safety deposit box. The hospital board had it all. Now, thanks to a quiet tip from Daniel, the district attorney was circling, and lawyers for other families victims of her fertility scam were sharpening their knives. Tonight wasn't her triumph, it was her reckoning, and I'd be there to watch it fall apart. I drove the kids to my sister's place that afternoon. Cole grumbled about missing his game. Ava hugged me tight and asked why I looked so serious. "Just a big night, kiddo," I said, ruffling her hair. I didn't tell them their mom's world was about to crash. They'd find out soon enough, and I protect them. When it did back home, I got ready, slipping into my best suit. The black one Isabel always said made me look sharp. She was already gone, praying at some salon, probably texting Marcus about their big celebration. Later, I checked my phone. Daniel last message. "It's set board's meeting. Now stay cool." I tucked it in my pocket, grabbed my keys, and headed to the gala. My pulse steady, but my mind racing with what was coming. The venue was packed when I got there. Doctors, donors, hospital bigwigs milling around under chandeliers, clinking glasses of champagne. I spotted Isabel across the room, radiant in a deep blue dress, laughing with a group of colleagues. Marcus was there too, hovering close his hand, brushing her arm. I clenched my jaw but kept moving, blending into the crowd. People nodded at me, said, "Hi, good to see you, Adam," or "Isabel's night, huh?" And I smiled back, tight and polite. They didn't know I wasn't here to cheer her on. I grabbed a drink, leaned against the bar, and waited. The program started. Soon after speeches awards, the usual pomp. When they called her name, the room erupted in applause. She walked up all grace and confidence, and I watched my stomach twisting with a mix of anger and satisfaction. Her speech was perfect, humble yet proud, thanking her team, her patients, even me, with a little wave in my direction. "Couldn't do it without my family," she said, and the crowd ate it up. I raised my glass, played along, but my eyes were on the board members in the front row. They weren't clapping anymore. One of them, Dr. Ellis, the hospital chair, whispered to the woman next to him, his face grim. Isabel didn't notice. She was too busy soaking in the spotlight. When she finished, the applause was loud, but it died fast. Dr. Ellis stood, stepped to the mic, and cleared his throat. "Thank you, Dr. Walker," he said, his voice tight. "Before we move on, we have an announcement." Isabel froze, her smile faltering. I straightened up, my heart pounding. "We've received serious allegations," Ellis continued, regarding Dr. Walker's conduct, specifically financial and medical misconduct tied to Horizon Holdings and fertility treatments. Effective immediately, she suspended pending investigation. The room went dead silent, then erupted in murmurs. Isabel's face drained of color, her award slipping in her hands. She looked around, panicked, her eyes landing on me. I met her gaze, calm and cold, and took a slow sip of my drink. Marcus stepped back, his charm gone, confusion taking over. People started whispering, "What's Horizon Holdings' misconduct?" And I saw her realize it. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. She stumbled off the stage, reporters already swarming, and I stayed where I was, watching her unravel. I didn't move until she pushed through the crowd toward me, her eyes wild. "You did this," she hissed, her voice shaking. I set my glass down, leaned in close. "You did this to yourself," I said, quiet but firm. "Enjoy your award." She stared at me, fury and fear mixing in her face, then turned and bolted for the exit, Marcus trailing behind like a lost puppy. The room buzzed around me. Shock questions, phones lighting up with texts, but I felt steady, almost light. I'd pictured this moment for days, planned every step with Daniel, and it had gone better than I'd hoped. Her career, her reputation, it was crumbling, and I'd lit the match. I left soon after, the cool night air hitting me as I stepped outside. My phone buzzed. Daniel again. "Damu, moving fast, she's done." I nodded to myself, got in my car, and drove home. The house was empty. The kids still at my sister's, and I sat in the living room replaying it all. Isabel's smug smile fading. The board's announcement, the look on her face. It wasn't over, not yet. But tonight was mine. She thought she could cheat, lie, and walk away clean. I'd made sure she couldn't. And as I poured a drink and settled into the silence, I let myself enjoy it, every single second of her fall. I woke up the next morning with a strange calm settling over me, the kind that comes after a storm you've been bracing for. The gala had been a knockout punch. Isabel's award night turned into her public humiliation, and I'd watched it unfold with a satisfaction I hadn't expected. She texted me late, a string of furious messages. How could you? You'll regret this. But I didn't reply. Let her stew. Today, I had one more move to make. One I'd been saving for the perfect moment. She and Marcus were celebrating at La Bella Vita, our favorite restaurant, the place where I proposed 13 years ago. I'd heard her on the phone yesterday planning it before the gala went south, probably thinking they'd toast her victory. Now it'd be something else entirely, and I'd be there to deliver the final blow. I spent the day with the kids at my sister's. Keeping things normal, helped Cole with his math homework, played dolls with Ava. They didn't know about the gala yet, and I wasn't ready to tell them where's Mom, Ava asked. At one point, her voice small. I forced a smile, said she's busy with work. Sweetie Sheck, see you soon. It wasn't a lie, not really. She'd have to face them eventually by evening. I dropped them back home with the sitter, got dressed. Dark slacks, a crisp shirt, no tie. And grabbed the envelope from my desk. Inside were the DNA results. Stark and undeniable probability of paternity, 0%. I'd made an extra copy just for this, folded it neat, and slipped it into my jacket. My hands were steady. As I drove to the restaurant, the city lights blurring past, this wasn't about anger anymore. It was about finishing what she'd started. I walked into La Bella Vita 20 minutes after they'd arrived. I called ahead, asked the hostess to text me when they sat down. The place was warm, familiar, all soft lighting and clinking glasses, the smell of garlic and wine in the air. I spotted them right away. Isabel and Marcus at a corner table, her in a red dress, him in a suit, both leaning close over half-empty wine glasses. She was talking, her hands moving fast, probably raging about last night. Marcus looked tense, nodding along. I stood by the door for a second, watching my chest tight with the memory of proposing there, down on one knee. Her laughing, yes. The whole room clapping. Now it was theirs. Her new spot with him. I pushed the thought down straight, straightened up and walked over the envelope, a solid weight against my ribs. They saw me when I was a few steps away. Isabel's eyes widened, then narrowed her lips, curling into that smug smirk she'd worn too often lately. Marcus shifted, uncomfortable, his charm nowhere in sight. I stopped at their table, calm, composed, and nodded at them. Evening? I said, my voice. Even Isabel leaned back, crossing her arms. What are you doing here, Adam? She snapped, sharp and loud enough that a few heads turned. I didn't flinch just dropping by. I said, pulling the envelope from my jacket. Congratulations on your freedom. Isabel thought you'd want this. I slid it across the table. Slow and deliberate, watching her face, she stared at it. Then at me, her smirk faltering. Marcus frowned, shifting in his seat. What's this? He asked, but she didn't answer, just grabbed the envelope, ripped it open and pulled out the paper. I watched her eyes scan. The page. Saw the moment it hit her. The DNA results. Cole, Ava, me, all laid out in cold print. Her hands shook just a little, and the color drained from her face. That smirk was gone now, replaced by something. Raw shock, maybe fear. Marcus leaned over, confused. What? What is this? He said, his voice rising. She didn't look at him, just kept staring at the paper, her breath catching. I leaned in close enough that only they could hear looks like your boyfriend's, the only real father at this table. I said, quiet but sharp. Funny how that works. The restaurant went silent, or it felt that way. The hum. A voices fading, his head's turned. Isabel's eyes snapped up to mine, wide and wild, like she couldn't believe I'd done it. Marcus grabbed the paper from her, scanned it, his face twisting. Isabel. What the hell he started? But she cut him off, slamming her hand on the table. "You bastard!" she hissed at me, her voice trembling. I straightened up, met her glare with a steady one of my own. "Takes one to know one," I said, then turned and walked away, feeling their eyes on my back. The room buzzed again. Whispers, gasps. But I didn't look back. I'd said what I needed to. Dropped the bomb I'd been holding and left her to choke on it. Outside, the night air hit me cool and crisp, and I stood by my car letting it sink in. She'd opened that envelope thinking she could handle anything. I threw at her, but she hadn't expected this. Not here, not now. Marcus's confusion, her panic, it was perfect. I'd taken her smug little celebration and turned it into a nightmare, right where I'd once promised her forever. My phone buzzed. Daniel checking in. "How'd it go?" I texted back. "Better than planned." I got in the car, started the engine, and drove home the weight of the last few weeks, lifting just a little. Isabel thought she'd controlled the story, but I'd rewritten the ending, and this time she wouldn't forget it. I woke up the morning after the restaurant showdown with a quiet I hadn't felt in months, the kind that comes when you finally let go of something heavy. Isabel's career was in tatters after the gala her affair with Marcus exposed, and those DNA results had hit her like a freight train. Last night, I could still see her face pale, shaken, that smug mask cracked wide open. The kids were still asleep down the hall, the house peaceful for once, and I stood at the kitchen window, coffee in hand, watching the sun climb over Ridgewood Heights. 13 years as Isabel's husband were behind me now, and today felt like the first page of something new, something I'd write myself. The fallout came fast. By noon, my phone was buzzing with updates from Daniel. The hospital had launched a full investigation into Isabel's fertility scam. Horizon Holdings was shut down, its records seized, and the board was scrambling to contain the damage. Families were coming forward, some with stories like mine, others worse, all pointing to her. The district attorney had enough for charges: fraud, embezzlement, maybe more. And Daniel said it had stick. Marcus bailed too. Word was he'd left her after the restaurant packed up and gone, probably spooked by the legal mess or just done with her lies. I didn't care why he was out. She was alone, and the divorce papers I'd signed felt like a clean break. I'd fought for full custody, and with everything piling up against her, the judge didn't hesitate. Cole and Ava were mine now, legally fully, no matter what the DNA said. I spent the day with them, keeping it simple. We went to the park. Cole kicking a soccer ball, Ava swinging high, her laughter cutting through the crisp air. They asked about Isabel again, and I kept it vague. Mom's dealing with some stuff, but we're okay. They nodded, trusting me, and I held on to that. I'd tell them more when they were ready, when I could spin it without breaking their world apart. For now, they were happy, safe, and that was enough. Back home, we made pizza, messy dough everywhere, them giggling as I dropped cheese on the floor. It was normal hours, and I felt lighter than I had in years. Isabel's shadow wasn't gone, but it was fading, and I was building something new in its place. That evening, Daniel called while I was cleaning up the kitchen. The board's forming an ethics committee on medical fraud. He said, "Want you on it? Your story, your fight." They think it'd mean something. I leaned against the counter, the phone warm against my ear, and thought about it. Me, Adam Walker, the guy who'd been Isabel's husband, her prop, now sitting on a committee to stop people like her. It wasn't what I'd planned. My life was numbers, spreadsheets, not this. But it fit. I'd lived it, lost to it, fought it. "Yeah," I said, "finally I'm in." He laughed short and sharp. Good, you've earned it. We hung up and I stood there, letting it sink in a new role, a new purpose, something I'd chosen, not her. Isabel showed up later that night. Unexpected. The doorbell rang, and there she was. Hair messy, eyes red, no trace of the polished doctor she'd been. The kids were in bed, thank God, and I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice flat. She hugged. Her arms looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. I need to see them," she said, her voice cracking. I shook my head. "Not tonight. Not like this." She glared at me, some of that old fire flaring up. "You've taken everything, Adam. My job, my life." I cut her off. "You did that. You lied. You stole. You chose. Marcus, don't put this on me." She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned away, tears spilling down her face. I watched her go, her car peeling out, and felt nothing. No pity, no regret. She'd made her bed. The next few days were quiet, steady. I went back to work, met with clients, started rebuilding routines. The kids adjusted. Cole opened up more. Ava clung a little less. People talked, neighbors, friends asking about the scandal, but I kept it short. "We're moving on," I'd say, and they'd nod, "Leave it alone." The hospital sent an official invite for the ethics committee, and I signed on. Meeting said set for next month. It felt right, using what I'd been through to stop it happening to someone else. I thought about Philip, his tired eyes in that diner, and made a note to thank him. He'd given me the key to all this. One night, after the kids were asleep, I sat on the porch, a beer in hand, the stars clear above. I thought about the last 13 years. Isabel, the life we'd had, the lies she'd spawned. I wasn't that Adam anymore, her husband, her shadow. I was free, not just for her, but from the version of me I'd let her shape. Cole and Ava were mine, blood or not, and this house, this life, was ours. Now I took a sip, let the quiet settle, and smiled a little. The story wasn't over. It was just mine now, and I'd write it my way, one day at a time.